Oh, and by the way, speakers, okay. So we are now recording. Hey everybody, this is Betta Broad in Kingston, New York at our wonderful New Yorkers for Clean Power storefront. I should say I'm sitting in front of a painting by Catherine Skopik, who some of you may know. She's a wonderful artist, activist in New York City, who was kind enough to lend her painting to our storefront, which is not only an office for our campaign, but a resource for all things related to clean energy and sustainability, and often hosting events and meetings for folks in our community to raise awareness about taking action on climate change. So we're really excited to have the space, and here tonight helping me is my wonderful friend Jess Mullen, who some of you may know from the campaign to ban fracking. And Jess is just here to assist with the questions. As I said before, please utilize the chat, which can be found in the middle of your screen. You just click the little box that says chat, and then you can type your question. Or if you've dialed in, you can text me 607-222-3678. So please utilize that, because we will have time at the end for Q&A. Now I want to introduce Miles Farmer, who is an attorney and energy expert at the NRDC, Natural Resources Defense Council. We're thrilled to have you, Miles. And look, I think you have access to your own slides, right? So you should be able to get those up. I think if you just click your screen. Let's see, share screen. Nope. Do you want to continue? Continue. Is that working?
Looks good.
Okay.
Okay.
Great. Yay, it's working.
All right. Well, thank you, Betta. Thanks so much for organizing this event, and thank you all for attending. Really excited about pushing the state to adopt a strong energy efficiency program. So what is all of this about? NRDC and all of these other groups on this teach-in have been working to push Cuomo to invest more in energy efficiency, to advance energy efficiency in New York State. One of the big aspects of that is that utilities in the state can invest more in energy efficiency. So a lot of you are probably familiar with the Clean Energy Standard program, which requires utilities to achieve 50% renewable energy supply by 2030 by getting more renewable energy every year into the electricity mix. But it's a little less straightforward for energy efficiency. Yet still, utilities can invest in energy efficiency each year and expand the amount of demand that is met by not needing to generate electricity at all, or not needing to burn natural gas or use fuel oil to power furnaces in homes and buildings across the state. So how does that work? It can work in a lot of different ways, but one basic mechanism, kind of simplified, is this graph here, which shows utility can give an incentive to an energy efficiency company. And in return, the energy efficiency company delivers energy efficiency improvements like building retrofits, efficient lighting. And with that incentive from the utility, they can deliver that cheaper to customers. The utility then recovers the cost of giving out those incentives through electricity rates on everyone's bills. And in return, customers avoid costs that they would have otherwise had to pay for electricity, to build transmission lines, substations. In the case of energy efficiency that reduces the amount of natural gas use, it means reduced need for pipelines, reduced need for natural gas infrastructure. And that can deliver huge benefits. So over time, the savings really grow. You can see on this graph, this is kind of a representation of electric side savings, but a similar phenomenon happens when you save natural gas or fuel oil. Currently, the state is achieving about 1% of total energy sales electricity sales the utilities make are avoided through these types of energy efficiency programs. If out to 2025, that amount were increased to 3% a year of total sales, then by 2025, that would have reduced the amount of electricity needed by 20%. So a huge fraction of the state's electricity needs could just be met by reducing them through energy efficiency. And more energy efficiency is needed to meet New York's clean energy goals across the board. One of the big goals is reducing carbon emissions by 40% from 1990 levels by 2030. And to do that, we need to reduce the amount of emissions from generating electricity, but also emissions in buildings. And to reduce the amount of natural gas, fuel oil we need in buildings, we need things like weatherization programs, switching to more efficient electric furnaces. Energy efficiency also will help the state achieve its goal of 50% renewable energy supply by 2030. This one is a little bit counterintuitive, but the basic reason for that is that by reducing the total supply, you need less renewables to achieve 50% renewable supply. So this graph here shows the amount of unadjusted load. Like without energy efficiency, this is how much supply would be needed to meet demand. And this is from the state's modeling from its 50% renewables by 2030 program. And the big takeaway here, the amount of new renewables needed to achieve 50% supply is in the gray there. It's about 29 million megawatt hours. Anyway, but the key point is the amount of megawatt hours reduced by energy efficiency is even greater than the amount that we're getting from new renewables. So this is a huge contributor to that goal. And without saving that amount of electricity, it's going to be much harder to achieve. You'll need way more renewables. And then, of course, also closing the Indian Point nuclear facility without adding emissions really hinges on increasing the amount of energy efficiency. Energy efficiency delivers a lot of different benefits for New Yorkers. It lowers overall bills. And if you have a broad range of energy efficiency incentives that benefit all different types of customers, then energy efficiency can be used to benefit all of those customers. And NRDC commissioned some modeling from Synapse Energy Economics to show that if we increase the amount of electric savings up to 3% a year, like I showed earlier, that could lower customer bills in New York State by, they estimated $3 billion by 2030. And that's just the bill savings. Energy efficiency also is an incredibly cost-effective way to create jobs. This graph you see below shows jobs in the energy industry in New York. Energy efficiency is by far the leading job creator. NYSERDA estimates 110,000 energy efficiency jobs already in New York. And the state could more than double that amount through increasing the amount of energy efficiency. It also improves public health by reducing emissions from the dirtiest power plants. In New York City especially, there are a lot of peaking power plants that burn oil. It's incredibly dirty, causes pollution that causes asthma, other health problems in the city. Energy efficiency also improves public health by increasing the health in buildings. And of course, it also helps fight climate change by reducing greenhouse gas emissions. So we're pushing Cuomo to make the amount of energy efficiency that the utilities are required to get each year much more aggressive. That'll deliver all these different benefits and help the state achieve its clean energy goals. Thanks. I think you're muted, Betta.
Okay, great. Miles, thank you so much. That was terrific. Very informative. And to answer folks' questions on chat, we will be sharing these PowerPoints. So everyone who registered on the Eventbrite, I have your email and I will send you a follow-up email with folks' PowerPoints, assuming that people are okay with that, our presenters, I imagine they are. And we'll also have some other links to take action on energy efficiency that we'll be following up with you about. So with no further ado, I am going to, well, I was going to pass this to Cecil, Cecil Corbin Mark. I'm still hoping that he may make some kind of surprise appearance. He's on a plane to Amsterdam, but thought he was going to be able to call in, but he hasn't yet, as far as I know. So I think at that point we will go on to Clark. Does that sound good?
Sounds good, Betta. Thank
Okay.
you. Are you able to load my slides? Or?
I will load your, let's see.
Well, cool. As you're doing that, I'll just give a quick introduction. So I'm Clark Gawker. I'm the Director of Policy and Strategy with People United for Sustainable Housing, or Push Buffalo. And we're based in Buffalo, New York. We're about 13 years old. We're a community-based organization. We work in a high poverty, multi-ethnic, multiracial neighborhood on the west side of the city. And we're engaged in a whole range of things. We do affordable housing development, community organizing, and since 2011, we've been a Green Jobs, Green New York CBO with NYSERDA, delivering energy efficiency as well as solar PV services to low and moderate income communities across Buffalo and Erie County. And so I guess that gives us, some standing in this space, and I think kind of a dog in this fight, as it relates to energy efficiency. We've developed a lot of capacity over the last 7 years as a kind of program implementer locally, and just here to share, just some kind of broad kind of swath policy priorities that we've worked recently with some of our counterparts across the state to develop and to communicate to state leaders. And so what I'm about to share are just some policy areas where we think we could see some significant movement with the adoption of a new energy efficiency standard. And we've gotten, again, kind of support and collaboration in developing these policy priorities from other environmental justice and anti-poverty organizations in the state. So I'm gonna run through pretty quick, and hopefully we'll have time at the end for Q&A, and of course folks are welcome to follow up with me after the presentation.
So Clark, can you just say next slide when you're
I will,
ready?
yep. Okay, so yeah, the title slide here, policy priorities for a just and equitable energy efficiency standard in New York State. Next slide. So yeah, strong statewide energy efficiency targets should comprehensively address the burdens and barriers faced by environmental justice, climate vulnerable and low-income communities and communities of color in order to maximize a host of benefits, social, economic, health benefits, including, and there's a list there, and for folks who are on the phone, maybe don't have access to the slides, I'll read these off. Benefits include lower rates of utility shutoffs, lower morbidity and mortality associated with a lack of electricity, heating, or cooling, especially during extreme weather events like superstorms, blizzards, etc., heat waves. Additional benefits, significant reductions in utility bills resulting in reduced energy burdens, healthier indoor environments resulting in reduced asthma and other respiratory conditions, and access to living wage green jobs for disadvantaged workers in our communities. And so we see these as really kind of the compass points that progressive state energy policy should move toward and should incorporate. And I think in certain respects, these really canvas, I think, what you'd see in the literature and in the blogosphere, in public policy, even as so-called non-energy benefits, which I'll touch on a little more later in the presentation. Next slide. So the first kind of policy priority area, we'd like to see the state adopt what we're calling an equity screen. And this has been something that's, I think, has seen some traction from a lot of different groups that are kind of organizing around these issues and advocating around these issues. Coalitions like New York Renews, alliances like the Energy Democracy Alliance have all kind of thrown weight behind this idea. And a lot of it, I think, relates to other kind of policy interventions that have been made elsewhere, in particular the state of California. There, the state, adopted a standard by which to guide reinvestment of climate and clean energy funds to disadvantaged, frontline, climate vulnerable communities. So we're essentially calling for the same thing in New York, and to set a standard that aligns with the state's low, moderate income population and kind of the incidence of high energy burden in those communities. Next slide. So our second priority area is inclusive finance. So as I mentioned, PUSH has been a Green Jobs, Green New York CBO. We're now kind of reprising that role in a new NYSERDA program. And I think one takeaway for us has been, despite the state's best efforts, access to capital has remained elusive for low and moderate income households and small businesses, and has served as a key barrier for those customers to access energy efficiency and their benefits. So, we've looked kind of, taken a scan of the landscape across the country and have found that there are solutions that exist that have proved viable in other utility jurisdictions. And I think what we focused on is a so-called inclusive finance mechanism that would essentially treat energy efficiency as a service that's delivered by utilities on a customer's utility bill, and would use the energy savings from an energy efficiency upgrade to repay the upfront cost that's provided by the utility company. And I think what's great about these tariff-based on-bill financial assistance programs is that they often don't revert to kind of conventional underwriting standards or other kind of barriers that pop up when you're thinking of energy efficiency in relation to more conventional financing and loans. Next slide. So third is housing affordability and anti-displacement. So I think it probably goes without saying that energy efficiency investments can be drivers of housing affordability, especially for vulnerable communities and households. They can help stabilize housing costs in neighborhoods where real estate values are appreciating, rents are rising, communities are gentrifying. But unless mechanisms are codified in state programs, such things as eviction protections or property resale restrictions that would accompany any energy efficiency investments or incentives, it could lead to kind of a spiral of displacement at the household level, at the neighborhood level. And that's something we absolutely want to guard against, I think, as a public policy priority. Next slide. Multifamily housing, and this can apply, not just to large multifamily housing, but we see this in Buffalo too, where in our neighborhood there's a prevalence of renters and renters who are utility account holders, but they aren't the property owners. And sometimes in these situations, and I think it's more common in large multifamily building contexts, in which a building owner may have a utility account for some of the major mechanical systems that service common areas and buildings, but it's apartment tenants, co-op tenants, others who might have individually metered or sub-metered accounts, and so here we're just calling for equity kind of across those kind of multi-building environments in which there is a split incentive to ensure that tenants in their dwelling units are seeing some direct benefit from investments a building owner may be making kind of in those major mechanical systems that really service common areas in the building. And I think to date, a lot of the existing programs, these kinds of accommodations have kind of been missing. So we're just calling for some corrective action there. Next slide. Cost effectiveness. So in New York, as in every state that deploys energy efficiency programs at the utility level or through state agencies, relies on a host of cost effectiveness tests or cost benefit analyses to measure the return on investment of public dollars in energy efficiency upgrades. And here we're just calling on New York to adopt a new cost effectiveness testing regime, tool, evaluation metric, whatever that accounts for non-energy benefits, such as those associated with local job creation, public and environmental health benefits, and the preservation of affordable housing. Next slide. Energy efficiency is often associated with improvements in the health of the indoor environment of a building once those upgrades are made. We think this should be kind of an intentional objective of energy efficiency programs that may result from, I think, the state's commitment to this new energy efficiency standard. There are national, models out there. One that comes to mind that folks are probably familiar with is the Green and Healthy Homes Initiative. And again, it's just, when efficiency upgrades are made to buildings, there are accommodations made through additional resource allocation, through the type of kind of professional, expertise that's kind of deployed to audit that home's energy needs and health needs that are kind of combined together, so that while we're making those efficiency upgrades, we're also remediating or mitigating legacy environmental hazards like mold and asbestos, or pest infestations that can contribute to asthma and other respiratory conditions. And we've seen success with this. We've been fortunate in Buffalo. Our local community foundation was able to leverage some attorney general settlement funds about 4 years ago, and ran a Green and Healthy Homes Initiative demonstration project here that we were able to braid some of the AG dollars with existing NYSERDA Empower and assisted home performance dollars to deliver really comprehensive healthy homes and energy efficiency upgrades to low-income folks across Buffalo. And so we think that that's something that the state should further invest in. Next slide. So here we're calling for programs that incorporate coordinated community-based program delivery. So using organizations like Push Buffalo or others across the state, some of those legacy Green Jobs Green New York organizations that met some success in the programs they were running in their communities, is to kind of continue to rely on them as trusted partners in educating residents about the benefits of efficiency and helping them to navigate the complexities of some of NYSERDA's programs. And to also serve as a resource as those customers go out into the marketplace to procure services from home performance contractors or energy efficiency contractors. We also think that the state should explore the creation of community-based one-stop kind of resource hubs that offer information about and access to energy efficiency services, but also to other essential social services that maybe kind of delivered at other points of access across the community. And so, housing all of those and under kind of one roof, we think is an idea that the state should turn some attention to. Next slide. All right. Utility accountability. So, New York has kind of a somewhat unique, I think, regime of both utility and then state agency administered efficiency programming. Some of it overlaps, but I think the state is, with reforming the energy vision, I think is more interested in turning to the utilities as kind of the prime movers of efficiency programming, and to kind of back NYSERDA out of that role over time. And so as that happens, I think it's critical that utility administered energy efficiency programs undergo some additional public scrutiny, and that utilities are accountable for such things as increasing energy affordability or decreasing utility service termination through investments in energy efficiency. And we think that information about their performance should be publicly reported, maybe even included in our utility bills in a easy to read format. And also to kind of reveal, where there may be gaps in the services they're providing, that may, could lead to, I think, additional scrutiny around, in relation to equity, if we find that those investments aren't making their way into, particular communities, low-income communities, communities of color, et cetera. So geocoded public reporting to track utility performance on their kind of energy investment track record. And last slide is just around job creation and contractor procurement. So this was, I think, a call that we've carried forward from our early Green Jobs, Green New York kind of advocacy days. We'd like to see NYSERDA adopt program-wide or portfolio-wide job standards that ensure, the jobs that Miles pointed out, the 110,000 energy efficiency jobs in the state, and the jobs that remain to be created are all family-sustaining jobs that pay good wages. And we want to ensure too that the energy efficiency marketplace, isn't left, to white male contractors to kind of make a run on. And so I think it's important that the state, again, makes some intentional moves to support minority and women-owned business enterprises to enter the efficiency marketplace and to have, I think, equitable access to procurement opportunities. And I think it's, we think that's entirely possible. I think we can, we've looked at existing programs like NYSERDA's Low Income Empower program, which I think historically has, relied on the utilities to make referrals to NYSERDA of kind of high energy consuming customers. NYSERDA would then often, kind of package those customer referrals to their network of Empower contractors. And so the state has played a more kind of hands-on role in procurement and kind of project allocation. And we think they could, continue that role and maybe step it up in ways that create additional opportunities for minority and women-owned businesses. So with that, I'll stop there. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Clark. A lot of great information. Okay, I think I'm stopping share. Okay, great. So we just had a lot of policy. My head is spinning. Hopefully all of yours are too, in a good way. And we're gonna have plenty of time for questions, so don't worry. I did notice there was a lot of passionate exchange happening in our chat, and I just urge you all to please keep it to questions at the moment, because otherwise it's a little distracting if it's like a back and forth on there. I, of course, love and respect all of the passion that folks in our movement have to chime in, but I also want us to stay focused on our presenters. And next up, we have Hal Smith, who is not able to be on video, but I have a slide of his. And Hal, are you with us?
I am, Betta, thank you.
Okay, wonderful. So Hal, I'm just gonna get up your slide here. And you all have to forgive me because this is the first time that I'm hosting one of these on Zoom. So it's a little bit of a learning curve. Done conference calls with people, but nothing this extensive. Not since Jessica Angela and I hosted a webinar just before the climate march many moons ago. So forgive my technological impairment. Okay, so I'm gonna just make sure, share my screen, and then Jess, paying attention to this, the other Jess I have here. Okay, so can everybody now see Hal? Okay, wonderful, there's Hal. Okay, we are so happy to have you. You know, Clark and Miles are speaking from, you know, kind of an expert policy perspective, and of course, Clark is also on the ground in Buffalo doing this work, but I think, Hal, you bring such a, you know, truly on the ground, day to day, running an energy efficiency business. And I think everybody, you know, would benefit from just hearing like the nuts and bolts of, you know, what does energy efficiency really mean in practical terms, you know, from kind of the easy stuff that people can do to the more involved, more expensive undertakings. And I know your company does it all and you've been doing it for a very long time. And you also have some thoughts from being in the field day to day and, you know, working on a lot of projects about the policies that could improve your work and enable you to, you know, you and other energy efficiency businesses to expand and hire more people. And of course, you know, Miles and Clark mentioned the importance of, you know, job creation and energy efficiency, which of course we all want to see. So how we can, you know, kind of do this as more of a conversation since, you know, you don't have the PowerPoint, but we really want to hear your thoughts. And if you just want to talk a little bit about, you know, to start your business and what you do.
Okay, sounds good, Betta. So my company name is Hal Co Energy, and we've been in business 34 years, since 1984. And what we do a lot of is retrofitting existing old homes. We're involved very heavily in the NYSERDA programs. We do a lot of work through the Empower program. We do about 1,000 Empower jobs a year, and also very involved in the Assisted Home Performance program, and also with the market rate customers. So we participate in all of the NYSERDA energy efficiency programs. What Halco tries to do is, you know, be able to take a customer right from start to finish, or take them partway through the process, and then down the road, if they want to expand and do more, we try to set them up for success so that they can do that. We do lots and lots of energy audits each and every day. We're typically doing 50, 60 energy audits a week. I'm sorry. So
That's okay.
we do, yeah, no, I had somebody just come to the door. I apologize. So we have, we're able to, you know, start out with a lot of energy reduction. We do these energy audits, and we have, you know, crews, spray foam crews that go out each and every day, and heating installation crews, and, you know, we do lighting retrofits. So, you know, all of that good work. We have about 120 people working, and we serve an area from Rochester to Syracuse down to the south to Ithaca and Cortland. It's a 12-county area that we try to focus in. Part of our business is, you know, renewable energy, and so once we get the customer to, you know, where their home is energy efficient, then we talk to them about their heating system, and we talk to them, encourage them to get with a heat pump of some sort. So we put lots and lots of air source heat pumps in. We're having great success with these new cold climate heat pumps. We've been involved with Tompkins County's Heat Smart program the last couple of years. That's been a great program to be involved with. And we also do a lot with geothermal heat pumps. So, once, and then we have customers that, they get their house tightened up and they put a air source heat pump in or a geothermal, and then it's time to talk about putting solar in. And we have a lot of success stories where we've actually taken old houses from the early 1800s, sometimes even the 1700s, and turned them into what we would call a retrofit net zero. Taking these old homes and these people now no longer have any energy bill. So that's a wonderful thing. And sometimes it starts out very simply where we have a customer that just simply, their hot water heater's leaking, and we get a call for our service department, and we go out, and instead of just changing that water heater with a standard tank type gas heater, we talk to them about, gee, why don't we talk about a heat pump water heater? And then down the road, as you think about solar, you're already set up. You can, heat your hot water with your solar system. So we're always looking to start somewhere when we get these calls, whether they come in as an energy audit referral or a service call to our service department, a no heat call. We're able to respond to these different calls, and we have the opportunity to talk to people about electrifying their heating system and their hot water system. So a couple things that that I think that would help the cause. I believe if there was a way that better information for the high users was out there. I can tell you that, like, National Grid once in a while will do a little pilot program where they'll put out a mailing and say, hey, you're the highest user in your neighborhood. But when they do that, our phone rings off the hook. People are very responsive, but that only happens once in a while. They don't do it consistently. And if more of the utility companies would do a program where they would identify these high users and urge the people to look into why they're the high user in their neighborhood. And if I really feel if there was a more common system of measurement, kilowatts per square foot or however they wanted to measure it, and that was a known measuring stick that people could use, I think it would really help the cause. So I think that utility, high user, meshed with how many square foot the home is with the real estate information, and if somebody was able to put those two things together and put them against a measuring stick, I think that would be a wonderful thing and really advance the opportunities. And I think another thing that's worked well for us in the past, but has recently went away is the financing. Hasn't went away, but it's gotten higher rates and such. What's needed when you're talking to these people about making some of these expensive retrofits, you need a financing that stretches out for a longer term than a bank is typically. A bank's going to give a home improvement loan and they want that at 5 years, maybe 7 years. NYSERDA's loan that was 15 years and at a very low interest rate, 3.49%, we were able to use that very successfully, and because we could match up the energy savings to the loan payment, and it would make great sense to people. I'm really not spending any more money than I am now because my savings are going to equal what my loan payment is, and so this makes great sense to do. But that's been more difficult as NYSERDA's been challenged with keeping that fund in place and has had to make some cutbacks. So I'd urge that a hard look at financing, availability for longer term financing, low interest rates for the longer term for energy efficiency improvements. I think it would help the cause a great deal.
And yeah, it sounds like it. And Hal, I know when we spoke on the phone, you mentioned kind of the challenges working with low-income folks and the financing there and the credit requirements. Do you want to say anything about
Yeah, sure. So, as we work with a lot of the Empower customers, and of course, all Empower customers are automatically assisted home performance eligible. So, a lot of these homes need a lot of work, and the funds that Empower allows are just not enough to really get the house to a good state. So, we have this great program, Assisted Home Performance, and it's a 50-50 match up to $8,000. And it's great, except for a lot of these folks, don't have the 50-50 match, and they don't qualify for the credit to get a loan. The loan's available, but they have to have a good credit score to get that. So, a lot of the lower income people lose out on taking advantage of that program because of the credit score problem. And I think what Clark was talking about earlier of a utility company being able to repay that loan with energy savings directly through the bill would make a tremendous amount of sense.
Agreed. Well, that was terrific. A lot of information. I don't know if you're feel like you're good. That was 8 minutes, so we could move on to Jess, and I'm sure people will have questions for you. But if there was anything else you wanted to add, feel free, Hal.
Yeah, no, I think I'm good. Betta, I appreciate the opportunity to speak.
So glad and grateful that you could be a part of this. People have questions for and people can ask questions at the end. So now we are going to move on to Jessica Agile, the director of Agree. Jessica, usually in Syracuse, is now in Houston. So Jess, I will pass it on to you, and I think you should be able to, there you go. Okay, you're in business.
Great. And can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Awesome. Okay, great. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. This is so exciting. And thank you to Betta for organizing and to all my co-presenters. So I am here to talk about beyond electricity efficiency, other ways that we can get down to reducing our greenhouse gas reduction, reducing our greenhouse gases and driving efficiency. As Miles mentioned, we are faced with a really amazing opportunity right now with Governor Cuomo saying that there's going to be a comprehensive energy efficiency policy set by Earth Day. So this is our moment as a movement to really push for an aggressive, all-encompassing energy efficiency standard to get ourselves on track in New York to meeting our greenhouse gas reduction goals. So again, those goals are 80% by 2050 and 40% by 2030. And this isn't just for electricity, this is for all energy sectors. So these energy sectors include electricity, which is actually the smallest piece of the pie of our greenhouse gas emissions that come from energy. It also includes transportation, which is the highest amount, the highest sector for greenhouse gas emissions, and on-site combustion, which is burning fuel in our buildings, mostly for heating our buildings, our homes and businesses, but there's also some burning of fossil fuels for cooking, also water heating, and for industrial processes. So this is generally where our greenhouse gases come from in the state. So how do we get there to reducing our greenhouse gases in all of these sectors? So this doesn't have to be exactly in this order. I think we actually are at the point where we need to be doing all of it at the same time. But basically, we need to maximize efficiency so that we're using as little energy as possible as we move forward to this transition. We need to be moving toward a 100% renewable electricity supply, so relying on wind and solar and hydro to produce our electricity, and then we need to electrify everything. So we need to move to electric vehicles and electric heat pumps, electric stoves, electric dryers, everything that we're currently burning fuels in, we need to move to efficient electricity and then supply that electricity with our 100% renewable electricity supply. So how do we electrify our fossil fuel use for heating our homes? About 90% of the homes in New York produce their heat by burning either gas or oil or kerosene, so fossil fuels. And to get to a 40% reduction in greenhouse gases by 2030 and 80% by 2050, and a lot of us think we need to go faster and farther than even the goals that the governor has set, how do we electrify our heating sector? The good news is there are technologies available today to do this, and these are what we sometimes call renewable ready efficient electric heat pumps. So heat pumps, there are basically two main kinds. There's the air source heat pump, which operates kind of like a reverse air conditioner. They're used commonly and all over the country, and there are cold climate air source heat pumps that Hal just mentioned that are now available, and the technology keeps improving. There are also even more efficient ground source heat pumps. You may know these as geothermal systems or geothermal heat pumps. And they're even more efficient because they, you drill down into the earth to tap into the constant temperature of the ground and then bring that warmth into your house, and then you use electricity to just heat it up a little bit from there. So both of these kinds of heat pumps are very efficient. They do use electricity, but they use much less electricity. And both kinds of heat pumps can be used for cooling as well. So basically, instead of burning fossil fuels in your house, you use a little bit of electricity to get free renewable energy from the earth, or in the case of an air source heat pump, from the air. There's actually warmth in the air, believe it or not, even when it's really, really cold, that can be used, that can be captured with this heat pump. And for a geothermal heat pump, both kinds of heat pumps are really efficient, and both are rated, their efficiencies are rated according to something called the coefficient of performance, or COP. And for geothermal heat pumps, for their COP is between 3 and 4.5. And that means that for every unit of energy that's used to power the system, 3 or 4 or almost 5 units of heat are created. So this is really cool. So fossil fuel furnaces, some of them are like, up to 90% efficient. I have a 90% efficient gas furnace in my house, and that sounds pretty great. But a geothermal heat pump is 400% efficient. So you are really maximizing the efficiency when you're moving to a heat pump. The other cool thing about beneficial electrification, which is the term for kind of electrifying everything to reduce our greenhouse gases, is that they're cleaner now, even with a grid that has a lot of dirty energy on it, and they're going to get cleaner over time as our grid moves to a more renewable energy system, as we approach 50% by 2030, or hopefully even faster, and as we approach 80% by 2050, hopefully faster. We will be, if you have a heat pump or an electric vehicle that is relying on that electricity, it's really efficient, and the electricity that's being produced is getting cleaner over time. So these are some charts for those of you who are on the Zoom and can see the slides from the Acadia Center, showing first the heat pumps, how heat pumps compare with the current energy mix to fossil fuel heating, and then how they will compare as the energy mix gets cleaner. The Acadia Center did this for the Northeast. This, I don't think, includes New York, actually. New York's electricity system is also getting cleaner over time. And then you can see on the other image the current emissions from all gasoline vehicles and fossil fuel heated buildings now, compared to if we just made all of those vehicles and buildings shifting to electric vehicles and heat pumps, and then further reductions as the electricity system gets cleaner. So with beneficial electrification, as someone wrote in the chat actually, this does increase electricity use even while it reduces greenhouse gas emissions. So when you're switching to a heat pump, you're taking out a fossil fuel burning appliance from your building and getting rid of all that fossil fuel burning. And then you're putting in something that runs on a small amount of electricity, but that electricity, some of that, it will increase the electricity load on the utility, even while reducing greenhouse gases. They do contribute to energy efficiency by heating our homes and going farther in our vehicles on fewer units of energy. And so we need an energy efficiency policy that doesn't cause utilities to fight heat pumps and electric vehicles in order to meet their mandates. So if we just set an electricity mandate of, say, 3% reduction in electricity load year on year, and the utility is held to that standard, they're going to potentially will fight things that add electricity to the system because it will make it harder for them to meet their incentives or meet their mandates. So we need a policy that's comprehensive and can address this issue. So we at Renewable Heat Now, which is a campaign that Alliance for a Green Economy and the New York Geothermal Energy Organization and New Yorkers for Clean Power and Sane Energy Project and others have started and have been running for almost 2 years, have been trying to explore some policy options. I know that NRDC is also exploring some policy options, so maybe Miles, you'll weigh in during Q&A about this, to start to think about what does a comprehensive energy efficiency policy look like. And so we've come up with some options and we're exploring these. So the most basic is to hold utilities harmless for the electricity that's used for beneficial electrification. So as we're measuring the utilities against the electricity standard that we create for them, if we create a 3% annual electricity savings, just when we're counting how much electricity and whether they're meeting those goals, we could hold them harmless and not count the electricity that was added through beneficial electrification, knowing that even though we added electricity during that time, we were taking fossil fuels off the system by getting gas vehicles off the road and getting gas furnaces and fuel oil furnaces out of our homes. Another thing that we could do, another step, is to mandate or incentivize utilities to do a certain amount of beneficial electrification in their territories. So not just preventing them from fighting it, also encouraging them to promote it. Further, we could provide additional efficiency credits to utilities as they reduce fossil fuels in other sectors through beneficial electrification. So we could set sort of a larger energy efficiency target that the utilities are expected to meet that doesn't just involve electricity efficiency, but we are expecting them to be responsible for some efficiency in the home heating sector and potentially in the transportation sector, and set the targets accordingly, and then give utilities credit for beneficial electrification as it moves toward those goals. And then finally, ultimately, we may want to think about moving toward not thinking as much about energy efficiency or electricity efficiency, but really starting to think about emissions efficiency and sort of how are we moving our entire system comprehensively toward emissions reductions. So I will leave it there. There may be a lot of questions. If you want more information about heat pumps and about the campaign, the Renewable Heat Now website is renewableheatnow.org. And I guess I'll pass it back to Betta, who will tell us all about how we're going to get involved and stay on course here as we approach Earth Day. And then I guess we'll probably take questions.
Thank you so much, Jessica. Let's leave this slide up because I just love that picture, and I bet everybody does, because that's sort of our dream scenario, right? That on every building, apartment, house in New York State and everywhere. That's pretty awesome. So we're going to jump into questions. I know there's a bunch. And another Jess here, Jess Mullen, has been helping to get them up so they're easily available. Here she is.
Okay, we're gonna do it in order in which they came.
Yes, although I do want to just shout out, because we may not get to the very end. I hope we do. I mean, I'm happy to stay on, but I also want to be mindful of people's times. And of course, I don't know if you heard, but one of the many women suing Trump is going to be on CNN at 8 o'clock. Okay, but don't go, stay with us. I'm getting a lot of, yeah, I'm excited.
So Kara Humphrey, we didn't quite get a full question about Indian Point comment. So if you have that, please type it in.
Yes, please. But before we go back to the beginning and Miles, because I know there's a few questions for Miles, I do want to just address Barbara Arundel's question about how to make efficiency exciting and sexy. I love that question, and I've been thinking a lot about it myself, having worked on solar campaigns and EV campaigns, which are a lot easier in many ways to sell, as Hal knows, I'm sure very well. Energy efficiency is a little trickier. So that's why we're here, right? We're getting our best minds together, and we want to hear from all of you. Beyond just this teach-in, we want to keep growing this movement and create videos, show people in their homes that their lives have been dramatically improved from, having a more efficient home. And yeah, stay tuned for how to make this sexy. I want to hear all of your ideas. You should all have my contact information, but I definitely think that that's a really important point that you hit on, Barbara, because it's not an easy topic to get people excited about, even though it's arguably the most critical thing that we can do to address the climate crisis. That's what we should do first, right? Okay, we are gonna just run through these. Paul Hawken in Drawdown identifies refrigeration as being a critical issue. Does the NRDC proposals explicitly address refrigeration? And I love the reference to Drawdown. I have the book right over here on the shelf, and I think it's phenomenal. So anybody who doesn't know Paul Hawken's Drawdown, check it out. Miles, take it away.
Yeah, thanks. So the answer is that the kind of policy proposals that I was describing are at a little bit higher level than the individual measures and strategies that companies are using to increase energy efficiency. But what our proposals do incorporate all different types of energy efficiency indirectly. So what we're looking for is for ambitious goals to be set that look at potential energy efficiency based on all of the different strategies, and then policies that encourage utilities to encourage developers to address energy efficiency in every way possible and to be flexible and get savings, where they're cost effective. So what that means in practice is that, for example, if the utility is paying an incentive based on the amount of savings delivered, that if refrigeration is a good strategy to deliver energy efficiency savings, then a company could propose that, they come up with a system for measuring the savings, and then these high-level targets would absolutely drive that type of approach.
Great, thank you for that very thorough explanation. So from Chris, is the Synapse study available to the public? I would be curious to see what cost or amount of public subsidy per kilowatt hour saved they used. Miles, that's another one for you.
It is. It's called the Aiming Higher report. You can find it via Google. We can also send it around to the participants.
Okay, great. Yes, we will include. We'll make a note to include that link. That's an important study. Terrific. So now we are going to jump to, I believe this is a question for Clark. Clark, hopefully you're still with us. I see you're on mute and we can't see you oh, there you are. Okay, great. What is the benchmark for the 40% equity screen? Does it align with population characteristics? We have a sociologist in the audience.
Yeah, that's thanks for that question. It's a great question. Jessica, feel free to chime in, but yeah, it's kind of a rough proxy for the kind of low to moderate income segment of the population in New York State. I mean, I guess it's pretty a pretty accurate reflection of that segment in terms of its percentage of the overall state population. And I think it's, I think embedded in it is also kind of an aspirational, like we can kind of go, bigger and bolder on equity than, say, the state of California, which has set, I think, a similar benchmark that I think is, and I think it's changed in the last maybe 18 months, but I think was around 25 to 30%. And so, yeah, I think, and I think it's also, there's, I think, an element of, I think, reparations is a very, I think, loaded word, but of, redistribution of resources that, low and moderate income communities have historically paid into the energy system and haven't seen, I think, commensurate benefits returned to them. So I think there is, in no small or inconsequential way, I think a strong element of historical kind of redistribution of resources and recovery of those resources. And so, yeah, that's probably a clumsy way of.
No, that's great. Not clumsy. You're never clumsy. That's brilliant. Okay. So we have a couple of questions about green leases. Do others in New York use green leases, such as those have been used in New York City? This is from Bob Wyman. And then also Lindsay Spear was wondering if you can explain green leases, that, they're not a common knowledge thing. Someone? Was it? No? Do I need to unmute someone else? Nobody knows about them? Anyone? No?
They sound great. Someone should probably put in the chat what they are.
I thought that was pertaining to something we touched on, but okay, we're going to follow up on that. Bob, Lindsay, we're going to...
I think Lindsay got her answer from Bob.
Okay. All right, we're going to huddle up on green leases because they're new to me too, but they certainly sound good. Okay, moving right along. Also, Lindsay, since you didn't get your question answered through that, how can low income, this is for Hal. Hal, are you still there?
I am, Betta.
Okay, great. So how can low income customers access your services? Is there a minimum amount of money people need saved up? How much can incentives cover? How can the incentives be changed to allow people with little money and or poor credit access energy efficiency improvements? Which I think I asked you and you touched on briefly, but I don't know if there's anything else to say about that. Because I think that's obviously a concern for a lot of us, is how do we make this more accessible to folks?
Okay, so the Empower program allows for up to $7,000 of no-cost energy efficiency improvements to the Empower eligible customer. And the Empower program focuses mostly on insulation, air sealing, lighting measures, and some health and safety things. They are not currently allowing furnaces, heating systems, or water heaters as part of that $7,000 improvement. To get a heating system improvement, they would recommend that the customer went to the HEAP program, or they could go to the Assisted Home Performance program and also get a high efficiency heating and cooling system through the Assisted Home Performance. But then comes in, and the Assisted Home Performance is an additional $8,000 worth of energy efficiency improvements. But that's a 50-50 program, and the customer has to be able to somehow come up with their 50%. So hopefully that maybe helps explain that a little better.
I think so. And sort of a follow-up question, have you had positive experiences with the kind of on-bill finance mechanisms that Clark talked about? I think you pretty much mentioned that you prefer those, right? And you think that those should be expanded. Didn't you say that NYSERDA had a program that was more robust for on-bill?
We sorry to say we have not had good experience at all with the current on-bill financing as it stands. The paperwork is very, very intense, and the same terms and conditions apply, and creditworthiness for the energy efficiency loan, and the paperwork is much less. So we go to the energy efficiency loan. We certainly agree in concept with on-bill financing, but the current, and I think Clark was talking about a modified version of that because the current program just is not a great program to use.
Okay. Two quick questions. How does Hal Co do passive house standard retrofits? And then also, have you seen an increase in geothermal since the tax credits were restored? And of course, New York State has a new geothermal program. Woohoo! What do you think, Hal?
Yeah, so Hal Co, we're not real involved with the passive homes. We're not. We focused on retrofitting existing homes, and the passive programs are more involved with when you're building a new home. So we don't get that involved. We certainly believe in that, but don't get that involved in it.
Okay. And what about the geothermal question?
Yeah. So there's definitely been a big uptick in interest in geothermal with the new tax credit, and it's now is a great time because you're able to still get the New York State incentive, and on top of that get the federal tax credit. So it's never been a better time to buy geothermal for sure.
Mm-hmm. And I don't know if you're familiar with Dandelion, but there's a question about efforts being made to standardize geothermal systems by the Ground Up Group or Dandelion. I'm a little familiar with Dandelion because they're based here in the Hudson Valley, but I don't know if you're doing any work with them.
We're not. We've had conversations with them. We're not doing any work currently. But I think the concept in Ground Up as well is to try to standardize the best way possible to get more people involved with geothermal and to get the price down at a more affordable price than the traditional way, being each and every system was a custom type system. So what's allowed some of this standardization is the new technology of inverter-driven compressors and variable speeds. So they can standardize with one size because that same heat pump can go from, just coasting to full throttle. And so it's this new technology that's allowing some of this standardization to take place. And I think we're going to see in the near future great things from that.
Definitely. And community ground loops. I'm very excited about those instead of gas pipelines. Okay, so one more question from Mark Schaefer. How can retrofits best be implemented for tenants who pay utility bills while landlords would have to agree to the work? As a renter myself, I would appreciate the answer to that. I don't know if Hal or Clark or anybody has other thoughts, and then we're going to go, I think, to one last question after that.
This is Hal. I mean, the challenge with the current programs is that you have to have a landlord that wants to participate because you need their signatures and their they need to partake in the system, and that's not always easy. Some landlords are gung ho, and others they don't want anything to do with it. So that's a challenge.
Indeed. Okay, well, I don't know if Clark, you want to chime in. Then we have another kind of policy question from Bob Wyman, but if anybody else wants to speak to that renter issue.
I mean, you know, some of that, I think that's a wicked problem, and I think everybody knows that. So, you know, I don't like solutions may ultimately lie at kind of the building code, the code enforcement level of just kind of compelling building owners, and then, you know, I think offering some carrots to you know, not necessarily, you know, penalize or treat all property owners the same. I mean, I know in our neighborhood there's a lot of undercapitalized, well-intentioned property owners. You know, I'm surely they're outnumbered by slumlords, but you know, I think there could be you know, kind of reforms maybe, but I think with just the state of kind of home rule in New York, I think that makes it difficult to kind of come up with a one-size-fits-all model. I think it's going to happen, you know, in a more local way if it does.
Okay. That's going to be an ongoing discussion. But I do want to get to Bob Wyman's question about, would it make sense to have a single energy intensity metric that included both electricity and fossil fuel use? Is that something maybe Miles and Jessica want to speak to?
Yeah, sure. And also to just kind of clarify a point in my presentation that I saw Bob ask about as well, which is we need to use efficiency to both reduce the amount of electricity used, but then also to convert use from fuel, oil, and gas to electricity, which increases the use. So Jessica had that great graph that shows all those carbon emissions that are from the building sector. And to get rid of those, we need to electrify everything. And so then if you're doing something like setting the 50% renewables goal, our view is that you need to assume that you're going to have electricity increases from all that good beneficial electrification. And that means, you know, it's going to be challenging. You have to build lots of new renewables to do that. And so simultaneously, you need to decrease electricity use where you can, and that makes that, you know, more achievable, more doable. So we think it makes sense to design this program in a way that encourages both of those things. And a way to do that is an all-fuel standard that looks at BTUs of energy saved, and it measures that as from all of the sectors. So for beneficial electrification, you have increased electricity use, but you reduced your BTUs by a lot from fuel, oil, or natural gas, and your greenhouse gas emissions from that. And then, you know, with the electric, you have a conversion of like megawatt hours saved to that BTUs number. And the overall goal is basically to have a high level target that encourages all of that, both at the level of the state goal, and then also when measuring savings from utility programs, you want to encourage them to save from all of these different sources. So we definitely agree.
Right on. Jessica, I'm going to let you, I know there are a few more questions, but we're getting a bit late. I only scheduled this, you know, for an hour up. I'm hearing there's, okay, I'll touch on that briefly, but I want to give Jessica a chance to chime in. And I also want to just let people know how they can stay involved with this and how we're going to keep building the movement for energy efficiency in New York. Jess?
I agree with Miles. And, you know, it's sort of, you know, as we've been looking at the various options, you know, I think that we, you know, at a minimum need to make sure that the utilities are on board with not fighting this. But I think this is an opportunity because the governor said, you know, comprehensive energy efficiency policy. And as we electrify everything, we need the utilities to get on board with beneficial electrification, and we need to be holding them to that. Because that's the only way we're going to electrify everything. They're going to be responsible for delivering that electricity unless we take them over someday. So, you know, we need them to get on board with this, and we need a comprehensive policy that looks at all these things. So agree with Miles on that.
Great. There was one other question from Bob Wyman about it that I think is a really interesting question about wouldn't electrical consumption increase with beneficial electrification? I don't know if we want to address that real quick.
Right, and so I think I kind of explained that. It definitely would increase, and so you need to, then also kind of comprehensive decrease it through use of energy reducing measures like efficient lighting, and then switch from fuel oil and natural gas, thereby increasing your use.
Emissions efficiency, love it. Okay, so there was a question about, is there a detailed agenda related to energy efficiency that groups want in Cuomo's Energy Earth Day announcement, or is it more various principles or approaches that they hope will be included? Well, I think tonight we, hopefully presented a lot of the different ideas and policy measures that we want Cuomo to take on Earth Day or direct the PSC to take. And we're going to keep building this movement to put pressure on Cuomo and the powers that be, letting him know that there's a broad range of voices that want energy efficiency and want funding for it, and want the majority of New Yorkers, all New Yorkers, to be able to access it in their homes and workplaces and community spaces, and that this is absolutely essential. So we're going to do a number of things as a follow-up to this. One is I'm going to send around an email, revolutionary step there, check your inbox, and there will be a couple of links to different petitions that have recently been put forward by the Sierra Club, by NRDC, that are going to Governor Cuomo, that I can share with you that have some ideas. There's also going to be a new microsite with some different resources from various campaigns around the state. I'm going to share all of these PowerPoints. You can find out about, for instance, the Renewable Heat Now campaign, more about Push's work. And there's also going to be a call-in day on April 3rd, where we're going to rally the troops to call Governor Cuomo and urge him to have a very strong, robust energy efficiency policy, 3% or more, and encourage beneficial electrification, encourage maximum amount of access, and really, I would suggest whatever you feel most passionate about, you highlight in that call, but that you make the call. And, and it only takes a couple of minutes to pick up the phone, as many of us have already been doing for years now, urging our elected officials to take action. They need to hear from us. So there's going to be a Facebook event for April 3rd that I will share with everybody. Please share with your friends, invite people. And, we just need to kind of keep building pressure going towards Earth Day, so we get the strongest possible mandate. But, it's not going to be a wrap on Earth Day, right? This is going to be an ongoing process. We know that things can, things are an ongoing thing. So we're, anyway, it's been a long day. I don't know if anybody else wants to chime in, any of our other presenters. Jessica, do you want to say something else?
Yeah, I would just encourage everyone, I think it's really, it's a testament to all there have been so many groups calling for an energy efficiency standard. What was that? You can hear me? Okay.
Your internet is a little wonky, but it's fine.
All right. There have been so many groups calling for an energy efficiency standard for so many years now. And it's finally gotten to the point where the governor has said there will be a standard set, but he hasn't set a number yet. And we know that there are, forces within our policy world, within the administration, that are, with us and pushing for this, but there are also, there's been a counter current within energy policy in New York to avoid standards and avoid mandates on utilities. And so it's really critical that people get involved and make their voices heard. We also have to be kind of protecting against the influence of the utilities in this fight. And so it's really joining the petitions and making the calls will, really help to show the administration that we're serious, and that they really need to set a high standard on Earth Day and that people are watching.
Absolutely. And I want to just say there were a couple of great questions that came in at the end, but I think we do need to wrap up. So I'm happy to
If
follow
I could
up with
just say
people.
something before.
Sure. And I also did want to, before we end, I just do want to give a brief plug for the New York Geo Conference, which is going to be addressing a lot of these issues just before Earth Day in Albany. But someone else was going to say something?
Yeah, this is Gio from Push Buffalo. I don't know if it was mentioned, I had to step out for a little bit, but New York Renews and Push Buffalo, along with other major organizations, are actually doing a trip to Albany the day after Earth Day on April 23rd. I could provide you details and then you could portray to everyone else. But basically, it would be a more hands-on. We're going to have a rally, a march, and a civil disobedience, which is a direct action. So a day full of action, basically putting pressure on Governor Cuomo so that he can walk the talk that he's been talking on renewable energy.
Thank you. And hopefully by then we'll have a great announcement that we can also celebrate about energy efficiency.
Yes.
So we're going to keep the pressure up. Fingers crossed. It's going to be a great day, Earth Day, my favorite holiday, hopefully many of yours. And let's, keep making every day Earth Day and building this movement for clean energy and sustainable communities all across New York State and beyond. So thank you all so much for participating. Thank you for being here. And the recording will be available. So if you learned a lot tonight and want to share this with your people, I will include a link in my email tomorrow. So please pass it on and keep spreading the word that we want strong energy efficiency policy on Earth Day. All right, and many other things too. So thank you all. Have a great night and hope to see you and talk to you soon. Thanks again to all my presenters. Good night.
Thank you, Beth.
Hi, thanks, Betta.